Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in the Field with your handyman in the field. This was a busy week, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff. If you've been watching the last couple This Week in the Field, you'll realize that this week was a very, very, very different week in comparison. I kind of knew this was going to eventually happen because it has repeatedly happened about this exact same way the last couple of years, where I have a couple of slow weeks or I plan things because I know it's going to be slow and then it gets busy. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is stuff that I'll get to it, but some of it I estimated all the way back in January. Some of it I estimated about a month ago. Some of it was waiting on parts that I just couldn't get at it, in a specific time frame. So there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to get into all of it. If you guys have any questions about anything as I go, please leave your comments in the section below, and I'll make sure to get those answered in the future. So let's dive into it. So we start on Monday. I don't know if I ever said this, but I don't typically work on Sundays. I hardly ever work on Sundays. I try to spend a lot of time with my family. I volunteer at my church, so I try to keep work separate from that. That doesn't mean that I'm not doing any back-end stuff with accounting or scheduling things and things like that, but I don't typically go to any job sites on Sunday. That's just, again, a luxury that I'm lucky to have, but there's no guarantee that might not happen in the future. I've had situations where I've had to go to places on Sunday, but I just wanted to make sure I said that. So starting off on Monday was the return trip to the job that I did last Friday. Last Friday, I talked about this. It was a customer, she's selling her house. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to get done. Last week, I did a lot of the trim work and painting. Be sure to watch last week's episode if you want to see stuff related to that. This week, I specifically went back because I had a couple of specific things that I needed to take care of that day. The catch, of course, was that I needed to take care of a bunch of other things this week, which had me literally all over the place. So this is not related to this, but again, I'm going to tell you about this because it has to do with the convenience of being able to have your own business. But I had an appliance repair person coming out to take a look at my washing machine on Monday morning. So I had that already scheduled, but because I didn't finish the entire job on Friday, I wanted to make sure that I could get back there as soon as possible, mostly because they had pictures being taken on Tuesday for the realtor. The house was going on the market on Thursday. Part of this was a delay on my part because I went on vacation. I was gone for an entire week after I had already quoted and got this job approved, but the vacation had been planned since June of last year. So it wasn't like I made sure the customer knew this ahead of time. But I needed to get to the location in order to make sure that I could get into the house. My contact at the house, he was able to give me a garage door opener so that I could get back into the house. Came back, dealt with the appliance repair person. Once they came and left, went right back over there. And the things that I had to do this time around was I had two small pieces of baseboard. You'll see the pictures. One was kind of destroyed from a cat box that was very close to the baseboards. So that all needed to get taken out. I needed to try to get it to look as great as possible. Now, the catch, of course, is in a perfect world, I would have preferred to use a brand new piece of trim that was primed and slap in an entire run of baseboard rather than just using little pieces. The problem was that's not what they wanted in their. I wouldn't say it wasn't necessarily in their budget, but I was specifically told they had baseboard, use this baseboard. When I brought up that I did not have enough on Friday, I was told we have extra pieces. When I went to look for the extra pieces, they were all small pieces. So I tried to make it work as best as I could. The finished product, it's not horrible looking. It's not as ideal as if it was a full run, but that's what the customer wanted. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to do what the customer wants, even if it's not what you would prefer, because what you would prefer is closer to perfection. They're not necessarily always looking for perfection. So I did that. In another room, they had a chinchilla that tore apart the top of 2 runs of baseboard. Luckily, I was able to do a full run on one side, and the other run was 3 different pieces, but luckily one was going to be behind the seam was going to be behind the door on one, and the other one was going to have the seam behind a desk. So again, not as noticeable. That was that. After that, I had to touch up a little bit of, there was a piece of trim around the window that I worked on Friday. I was asked to try to make the corner look a little bit better. Not a problem. It was mostly because the tile, well, part of it was that in an ideal world, you'd take out the entire trim and do the entire thing with sealed corners. The problem is that when I took it apart, they had the little corner pieces that hold the corners together as a complete piece. And because one of those came out, they weren't lining up perfectly. So I fixed that. Painted it. The actual customer, she got back while I was wrapping up something else. She was happy with everything as far as she could see. I needed to replace the trim around the garage door. So this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like after. That's pretty straightforward. It's just a strip. You pull it off. In the situation with this, which it's sandstone is the color, you try to save those nails because whoever installed it originally, they used paint on those nails and it's the same color. You cannot get those unfortunately at the store. You can get white and you get brown. So you can get, if you have the chocolate colored one, you can get nails that match that, but this is what I had. So I used the nails that were there so that they would match, rather than just having holes that you'd have to caulk and paint afterwards. So there's that. And that was basically it. Now, if you remember last week, I specifically talked about the Anderson door, that I had the wrong part. That was on me. I bought the passive lock mechanism and I needed the active lock mechanism. I had ordered that last Friday, explained to the homeowner that the part would be coming. That obviously isn't going to affect any pictures. So that was that. While they offered to pay, I don't typically like accepting any sort of payment until I completely wrap up the job, just because I don't like splitting it up, because then it's potentially different jobs, or they randomly decide after the fact, hey, we don't need to worry about that part anymore. I'm on the hook for those parts, because a lot of times these parts, they're not, I can't get full refunds for them. There's at least a minimum of a restocking fee in a lot of cases. So that said, I explained to her that I could come back as soon as the parts come in, and that wrapped up. But I did not complete that, so that was that. Tuesday, I had a job where I basically, I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago. She had a garage that I previously did in the past. She wanted storage racks, storage system racks, I should say. They're like long pieces that a bunch of hooks connect to. She wanted a bunch of them installed all over her garage so she could organize her garage better. I previously painted the garage, but I did not get the front wall of the garage painted specifically because she just had too much stuff that was in the way. So I went back, painted that wall, hung up an entire wall of garage walls, which you could see here. And after that, I was kind of limited on time that day. And mostly because there was just no way I was going to finish that day anyway. So I arranged to come back. Originally, that job was actually scheduled for Monday, as the calls continue to come in. I originally had that job scheduled for Monday. She had a delay in the parts coming from Lowe's. So because of that, I pushed it to Tuesday, and she had the parts, but I didn't have Wednesday available. I originally had planned to have 2 days available to wrap up this job. It just didn't work out like that. So that was that. Tuesday also, there was a big storm that was rolling in our area. And because there was a big storm, they canceled all after school activities except for at the high school. So because of that, a lot of people were making, let's just put it this way, they were making it they were being very precautious about what could potentially happen. Because of that, everybody was trying to get home earlier. And the other thing was, she wanted to get her vehicle inside of her garage so that if there was hail, her car wouldn't get damaged. So I got done that day. moving on to Wednesday. So this is where we start to get a little bit crazy. So one of the jobs that I quoted way back in, I think it was actually December, but it was broken up into 2 separate jobs, was replacing 6 interior doors and trim. They were currently that golden oak color, or just oak in general, depending on the door. There was a bunch of doors, and the trim, it's just the trim around the doors. It's not the baseboards. The baseboards were already previously installed by somebody else. There was 2 sets of doors that were framed out but never finished, which included that will need bifold doors. And there was a door at the bottom of the stairs that needed to be completely removed and just put trim that for the door to be open at the bottom of the stairs. So this job I quoted back in December. It was approved. There was 2 reasons for the delay. One, it's a big job for me to do by myself. It's definitely something I can do by myself, but I'd have to dedicate a lot of time for it. And I didn't necessarily knowing that I could get it done faster if I had a helper, great. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a helper. My oldest son is going to be turning 16 later on, but he's still in school, so he's not available unless he's off of school. I don't have any other helpers right now. That's the unfortunate part. But I did post it's not really, I guess it was an ad, but it wasn't like a paid ad on Facebook back in January about looking for a helper. I had a couple people respond, but nothing actually panned out. Most of the people who actually did respond, I would send them to a application that I asked them to fill out, and then they never responded after that. And I guess that was probably because they were looking for cash under the table, and unfortunately, I don't work that way. I would prefer to work with legitimate businesses or people who they know they're going to get a W-2 from me at the end of the year or a 1099. So that said, I wanted to make sure that I got that. The few people that did respond, there was a lot of disqualifying things about their situation. Most of them weren't available during the day, which is when I primarily will be, performing work. So that's not going to work. There was, however, a contractor who reached out to me based closer to the city, and he has a whole crew of guys and can take on larger things, but is always looking for work. So he's not slow by any means. He has stuff going on, but I asked him about this job a couple weeks ago. He said absolutely, sent him pictures. He gave me a price on what he wanted. It was within the range of what I was willing to pay and also what I could, what I quoted for the job. So there was that. And then, so I scheduled that, but then I had to order the doors, and the doors were going to take about 2 weeks to arrive. So that brings us to Wednesday. Wednesday morning, I had a delivery of material, or those doors were getting delivered to that house with the preparation of the work being done on Thursday. At the same time, I had a project going on at my own house where I'm trying to finish out my basement slowly but surely, just because I've got too much stuff in my basement to be able to do it all at once, and I don't have the budget to do it all at once anyway. However, I do have enough to start getting some of the areas framed out. One of the things we wanted to do was turn the stairs 90 degrees. Here's what it looked like before, here's what it looked like after. And the idea is that if we were able to turn the stairs, it'll open up into a large, open area, while the other direction it would have opened up into a wall. It just makes it more inviting. It wasn't a cheap thing, but as someone who obviously manages projects like this, I'm managing the project through the business for my home because I'm using subcontractors for the work. And they don't know me personally, they know me, the business. And I don't particularly want them to know that this is my house either. So that's the other side of it. So hired them, or hired a guy that I worked with last summer on a job. He's a carpenter. He basically turned the stairs, and the lumber also had to get delivered for that. That actually happened on Thursday, but I need the lumber needed to be delivered here at almost the exact same time the doors were supposed to be delivered at the other place. So it was making sure one got delivered, getting to the other one. That was fun. I'll just leave it at that. And then after that, I needed to go back to the condo building that I was at last week that had the latching doors. I replaced the latches. I got a call back on Monday from the property manager that basically said, he got a call from the HOA president, the doors aren't working, you need to go back there and fix them. To which I said, I can absolutely go back, but I explained to him that the actual knobs themselves were the part that was actually having the problem outside of the actual locking mechanism, and explained to him that that would be an additional fee if that was going to be an issue. Not only that, but I had videos of the latch working perfectly after I installed it. Everything was working fine. The HOA president walked through, tested the keys, tested the knobs, everything worked. 4 or 5 days later, magically, nothing works. Now, it was a bit exaggerated. One of them was stuck, but it was 100% that knob. So what I suggested to the property manager was, I was like, let's just go the route of trying to get those knobs replaced with the push latches, and if we can get those, if they'll approve it, I can get those parts from Granger, and I can probably get them and be over there on Wednesday afternoon. So was able to get that approved, went over there. So technically this is the first job of the week. So that job last week was I think it was $540, and this add-on with these materials came out to another $440. So that bill changed from $540 to $990 was the total bill for that then. Was able to get it done. The latches look better, works better, and it's actually better longevity because the push bar is not going to have an issue like the knob or the handle will. So that got replaced. That took a little bit of time, but after that, then that was pretty much my day for there. Then it was just a matter of getting everything prepped for the next day. So the next day on Thursday, I had that door job, but I needed to meet the crew that I had going there to do the work. Met them. It's always rough meeting somebody for the first time that you've never worked with, but worked out, no issues. Great guy. Looking forward to working with him in the future if I can get some more bigger jobs. It was him and one of his guys, which was his lead carpenter. They got in, got them set, explained what we were doing, then left to get back to this other project at my own house to meet the carpenter here, to let him in, get him inside the house, to have, go over the project, do that. Then left there, went to Home Depot to pick up a door that it turns out I ordered one door the incorrect way. I ordered a right hand. It was supposed to be a left hand. So I needed to run to Home Depot to get a door because that was the only place that had one in stock. There's also a unique size. There's only a 24-inch door. And I needed to pick up the trim for around the doors because I didn't buy that ahead of time because I knew I could get that very easily. And I wasn't planning on being on site the entire time at the door job. So all of that being said, get that trim. Then I get a call from the carpenters that says, hey, we're having an issue. There's not going to be enough space for the door according to the architect's plans. Do you want to come and take a look at this? So drive from Home Depot back to this job. This job, I go and I take a look, have a discussion. We get on the same page. He's like, okay, I'm going to get to it. I leave here, go back over there, drop off all the trim. By the time I got back, which was about 10:30, so they had been there for about 2.5 hours, they had all the doors taken out and they had all the doors put in. They just had to, they had the doors in. They didn't have everything like set, but they still needed to do all the trim work, which obviously takes a little bit more time. But I was very impressed with how fast they moved. Then I cut up, after we got all the materials that I bought inside the house, we then got I took all of the debris, chopped it up so that I could drop it off at the dumpster. Did that. After I did that, I had to go to Home Depot to get some trim board because the one door that we had at the bottom of the stairs, door casing was going to be too small. So I needed to go get some 1x5s in order to make the door casing, just custom door casing. Did that, went back. They were in the middle of doing everything they were doing. Then I started, actually I take that back. After that I started doing this other project. So the other project that was part of that door project was the customer had a surfboard that was like a promotional Corona surfboard that they had from that they had gotten from somebody. I don't know if, they got it from a friend who owned a bar or what, but they had this surfboard. They wanted the surfboard mounted in a way where they could use it as a countertop. So I had already ordered these. They're not necessarily custom. They are manufactured, but there's a company called ironsupports.com who they make a variety of different types of solid metal, like very solid, that can hold a lot of weight, brackets. And these brackets are able to hold a lot of weight. In a lot of cases, they use them for bar tops and countertops and things like that. So I ordered a set of that, mounted them to the wall in the studs, got the surfboard on, drilled holes, got everything set. And then the carpenter at the other project calls me and says he's almost done. And I'm like, I thought you were going to be there all day. And he's like, well, I'm almost done. So I had to leave there, come back over here to check the work, make sure everything's set, get him paid. I'm not going to go into the details of what the project at my own house was because it's not business related in that sense. I'm just managing it, but I'm not actually charging myself, for the work. But figured that out, got the carpenter paid, the carpenter leaves. Then I had to do a couple of quick errands before I had to get back over to the other place to make sure they were all wrapped up and clean. But it was already late in the day and I knew I wasn't gonna have enough time to get everything else done. So talked to the homeowner, explained that I was gonna be back on Friday morning right away. After I would be back on Friday morning, I would get everything cleaned up. I mean, everything was swept and that. It wasn't like there was, massive piles of stuff everywhere, but everything just needed to be mopped. I like leaving everything clean, no dust seen on the floor. And then I needed to finish that surfboard countertop. So got that taken care of, got that crew paid, and they were on their way. Now that crew, I don't know if it's a good idea to go into the details of how much it costs for the crew, but so I'll leave it at that. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll talk about that in the future. But every crew is priced differently. My pricing is what I want to talk about. So I'm not giving you the breakdown of all of the materials of every single job either. So I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to talk about what crews charge, because I don't necessarily want to reveal other people's pricing, because that's not it's not my gig. My gig is to obviously reveal my pricing. So wrapped up there, came home. That was the end of Thursday. A lot going on. It was a busy day. I mean, I was back and forth all day. And I'll be honest, I don't mind it. I don't mind that. I don't mind having to run and get some materials for somebody. I don't mind having just to clean up some things after the end. I don't mind the work of essentially it's a helper, but it's also supervisor, because I'm still paying these guys to do the work, but making sure that my job sites are up to my standards, meaning they're clean and all of that at the end of the day that's my job. If there's something missing, I'd rather have the guys who are performing the work on the job site rather than having to go run to the store and pick up a piece of trim. That's a waste. They could be doing something else or working on something else if I run to the store and get the materials. So in the future, I'd love to do more of that, where I have, crews and I can just be in charge of getting the materials and supervising and dealing with the customers. That's an ideal scenario. But for smaller jobs, which is the majority of what I do, I would still continue to do that unless I had an employee or a technician that was working for me to do those small things. So get to Friday. My son was with me for the day. It wasn't a full day, but for the day, because he was off of school and he's always looking to make extra money. So he was my helper for today. And we went back to the house with the doors. I had him sweep up everything and vacuum around all of the door jambs and things like that to make sure we weren't leaving anything behind. I finished the surfboard, which you can see here. The only thing that's not ideal about the surfboard is where the screws were holding in. I wish that they were a little bit more flush, but the problem is that the material that the surfboard it is essentially hollow. Well, it's not hollow, but it's foam inside, and because it's foam, the foam doesn't allow you to have a lot of grip. So all you're really gripping to is the top, but if you pull too far, all it's doing is actually squeezing the surfboard. So if I hear something from the homeowner, I'll let you know, but he seemed happy he honestly looked happy, or he said he was happy with the way it looked, and I didn't even have the screws in he was just happy that it actually was getting done. So I finished the surfboard, had my son clean up everything, vacuum, went through and mopped, and that was basically it. So that completed that job. That customer actually cut me the check on Thursday for the job. That job total price was, if I remember correctly, it was $4,960. Nope, that's not right. I had the other job on there. It was $445.60. So $4,560 was the total price on that. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of materials for the doors. There was the brackets, which, just so you know, those brackets, they weren't cheap. They were about $100. I had the crew that worked. So while I didn't necessarily make a ton of profit or money for myself off of that job, it was a big job that I got done. Now, that customer already talked to me about doing 3 other small projects in his house. He's got a ice maker under his countertop that he wants replaced. He already has the new one. He needs a light replaced, and there's an outside outlet that's not working that needs to get repaired / replaced. So sometimes things lead to other things. And when you show that you're a professional and you can take care of something, they're more willing to offer other work or tell their friends that you can do work. He happens to be a contractor himself, not in the same industry, and he's about to retire. So, who's to say it couldn't necessarily lead to something? You never know what work can lead to something else, and that's something important to note. So then we left there. We go over to the garage that I worked at on Tuesday. There was just a couple of rails that need to get put up. We had a corner that had some rails with pegboard, which you can see here. And then we had a couple of rails that were going above the garage door opener, and we had a couple of other rails that were going in some other miscellaneous spots. So once we took care of those, we helped her move just a couple of larger items that were in the way. And after that, that was pretty much it. We wrapped up what we needed to wrap up there. That job was complete. That job got billed out at $840. That was mostly based off an hourly rate. It's hard to gauge those types of jobs because I typically charge a little bit less for painting because it's not as skilled. And I typically charge more for electrical and plumbing type work. However, this was a situation where she has racks. I don't have any idea how many she's going to have. She just says she's going to have a bunch. So it's more of she knows roughly how much I'm going to charge per day because I have given her a rough estimate on what I would charge if I was there all day. That said, I have to be careful because I also don't want to be like, oh, you can have me work for you for the entire day and do whatever you want for this price, because that's not how I price my stuff. So that was $840, sent that invoice out. And then to wrap out the day, I had to go return the door that I had that was the wrong door. I had to go return that so that I could get credit for that. I need to get in touch with Anderson to return that other part that I ordered incorrectly and got that taken care of. And then the customer from Monday, the one who was moving out, she had the the parts from Anderson. They came in on Wednesday. So I had messaged her and said the parts are in. Let me know when you're available. I can squeeze you in on Friday afternoon if you're available. Otherwise, I have got next Tuesday. She had responded back and said she might have a showing, but if she didn't, I could certainly come by and take care of the door. So she got in contact with me today, said if I was available, I could get over there. So I went over there, completed that work. So we had broken door latch / active lock mechanism and a repaired one. And then after that, that was it. That completes that job. So that job was $1,900 for everything. There was, like I said, that Anderson part, which wasn't cheap, but outside of that, most of everything was just miscellaneous stuff. There was obviously some other parts and stuff, but for the most part, it was straightforward materials. Nothing crazy except for that Anderson part, which was like $375. So there was that. So That wraps up my entire week. I am recording this on Friday. Saturday, I don't have any work, so I'm a little bit earlier with recording this than I normally am because I typically record these on Saturday mornings if I don't have work. But basically for the entire week, for the stuff I actually build out. Now keep in mind, some of this stuff I started weeks prior and things like that. The total week out was $8,290 for the week. Not a bad week. That's not every week. That's certainly not every week. But there are weeks where it does come out like that. Now, when I look at some of the previous weeks that I've had, obviously the numbers have been a little bit lower, well, a lot lower than that, but they haven't been anywhere near that because some of the stuff takes multiple weeks. It's just how it is. Sometimes you have material costs that you have to figure out how to do. I know some people collect deposits for materials. If I had much larger projects, I would 100% be collecting deposits, but for stuff that's generally 20 to 25% of the job, anything higher than 25%, that's when I start collecting or the total estimate, then I start collecting actual deposits, but that's not a typical thing that I have to worry about. So with all that being said, it wasn't a bad week. Hopefully you guys are, if you guys are in the trades, your stuff's picking up. If you're a handyman, this is the time that everything should start getting busier. People start getting their tax returns. I got 3-4 calls today from various people. One's an existing customer. The other people are all new that are looking for people to do work. So I do have to return some of those calls, but I have almost a good chunk of my week next week is booked out. I have a couple openings here or there, which I'll probably end up filling up, but we'll see what happens when I talk about that next week. So hopefully you guys are enjoying these. If you are enjoying them, I would love to hear what you're enjoying, what you'd like me to focus on more. If there's something that you don't think is necessary, please leave a comment below. I appreciate it. And be sure to check out this specific series as I release new episodes every single Monday covering the previous week. And hopefully you guys subscribe, like the video. I appreciate any support you can give to the channel. And with all that being said, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for taking a watch, and we'll see you guys next time.